Thank you for the honor of the award and the draping. And especially my two grandsons, Wayne and Mark. They knew that their grandfather would be here for a few hours. I have to unfortunately leave this evening. To all of you, Wanakam, greetings from Guyana. I've been very honored to be invited to this convention. And at one time I was not too sure I could come because the president of Guyana, David Granger, he is the current chairman of the Caribbean community. 14 nations of the Caribbean, Central, and the only South American country, Guyana. He has to attend a summit, and I've been asked to return shortly so I can perform the functions of the president when he leaves. But he has encouraged me to come because for Guyana it is very important that we maintain connections with the Indian diaspora generally. And for me in particular, I feel rather emotional to attend a gathering once again of people of Tamil origins. In Guyana, we refer to the Tamils as Madrasis. And for those of you who do not know anything about Guyana, I'll just like to very briefly tell you something about this country. Almost one half of the people in Guyana, which is situated on the shoulder of South America, it is the only English-speaking country in what is referred to as Latin America. We have been a British colony for some 300 years. And the reason for the establishment of Guyana, which was then British Guyana, was to exploit its potential as a natural resource country. 80% of Guyana is made up of virgin tropical forests. People call it the green paradise. The inhabitants live on 10%, which is good for cultivation, 10%, which is basically the coast adjoining the Atlantic Ocean. The soil is very good for rice and for sugar, but the British saw Guyana as a sugar plantation to produce all the commodities they wanted to export to Europe. So they first brought Africans to the territory as slaves, and when slavery was abolished in 1838, the British brought the first set of Indians from India and continued to do so from 1838 to 1917. For 80 years, they transported Indians as indentured servants, as bonded laborers, and put them to work in the sugar fields in conditions that were described as semi-slavery. Great hardships were endured, and sufferings and sacrifices. In all, over those years, about 240,000 Indians were transported to the then British Guyana, 4% of which, a small number, were Madrasis. Madrasis because they came from the port of Madras. And they formed a small community that was described by almost all writers as rebellious people. I saw the word rebellious, meaning that the Tamils or Madrasis were very courageous. They stood up to the planters. They were among the first who fought the planters, took the planters to court. They were also brilliant people. Many who went there and were put to work in the sugar canes as cane cutters, to work under the burning sun, under the scorching heat. They were actually not laborers. They were mathematicians. They were accountants. They were fools. And it was a Tamil or a Madrasi who first took the British to court for breach of contract, so that they have made an image of themselves. And so the British condemned the Madrasis to a small community in the rural area of Guyana, the first being a village that was named Wim, which the British brought from the Dutch to place the Madrasis there, side by side with the Africans, freed African slaves, because the African slaves staged revolts and rebellion and didn't want to go back into the sugarcane fields. And so Tamils were condemned to live beside the rebellious slaves. I came from that tiny village called Wim. I was born there. My father was born there. He didn't want to work in the sugar estate. He became a fisherman. He became a butcher. He became a vendor. He became everything else except that he didn't want to work in the sugar fields. And he didn't want his sons to work in the sugar fields as well. We never did. And it was out of the courage and sacrifice of my parents that I have emerged in the mainstream of the political life of Guyana. From 1961, I threw my efforts into the struggle for the independence of Guyana. So I've been around very long now, for 56 years, in the political life of Guyana. I worked as a minister under 5 presidents, 5 of the 8 presidents. And this is the first time I became Prime Minister in a multi-party coalition. But I too have been a rebel. My grandfather was born, Veerasammy, was born in Guyana. But my great-grandfather's grandfather, he came from India. His name was Nagamootoo, with his father, whose name was Veerasammy. And they came with their 2 other brothers and a sister. And I've now discovered that they came from the southern part of Tamil Nadu. I'm in the process of getting some more information, actually, but I know they came from the Telugu-speaking area of Tamil Nadu. And so I stand here today feeling very proud to be a descendant of Tamils. I know how difficult it is for you and for all of us to define ourselves in our communities and to define ourselves in the world, because we are numerically small. And in Guyana, Tamils had to fight to maintain their culture. Their worship places, they were relegated to the seaside. They couldn't be tolerated among populated communities because some of the rituals involved sacrifices, which were frowned upon by the British and perhaps hated by other sections of the community. But they survived, and they learned to do something called creolization. They adapted, and they cooperated and built social cohesion with the African community. And when I went to Guadeloupe, or you call it Guadeloupe, we call it Guadeloupe, the French island, my wife and I were there last month. We were taken to a remote island where mostly Tamils in Guadeloupe. They were condemned as convicts, and they were sent to the dungeons to a place called Fort Napoleon. They couldn't escape from the island. It was like a devil's island. And it was with some great emotions that I looked at the tombstone and I saw the name Mutain. I saw the name Ramaswamy. I saw the name Venga Salam and Arna Salam. And I realized that perhaps some of the rebels in my blood, in my family, must have been put off on the way from India to British Guyana in the island of Guadeloupe. I'm told some of them must have come from Pundachari. But their life also was a life of struggle, a life of sacrifice, a life of resistance. And I'm so proud when I look at the word convict that I was not seeing the word criminal. I was interpreting the word to mean freedom fighters. And so Tamils, you should be proud of yourself. You should be proud that you have resistance in your culture. For us, and I've been very moved by the performance here, especially that a part of the performance was sponsored because I'm leaving this afternoon. I relish the idea of hearing the tapu. And the book I wrote that was named Henry's Cure, that captured the life and struggles of Tamils or Madrasis in Guyana, I placed on the cover of the book a tapu with two hands, because for me, the tapu is a drum. It reverberates through centuries. And I suppose for Tamils, as is true of other ethnicities, that our culture, our language, our dance, our music, our poetry, our literature, our art, it will reverberate for centuries and centuries to come, unendingly. And that is why FeTNA, as an organization, is congratulated and should be encouraged to continue the work you are doing to maintain your culture, even though you live in North America. My wife couldn't be with me here today because she has just left the United States and Canada to return home. We have just celebrated the birth of our sixth grandson, the first in Canada, 5 in the United States. And so I can say with some sense of pride that we too have our little Tamil Sangam in North America, 6 grandsons. So today, I want to put aside the notes I have brought from Guyana because I wanted to speak to you as a brother, as a relative, a distant relative you may say. But to bring you the message in a few words. First of all, the example of Guyana. We are 83,000 square miles, 214,000 square kilometers, a very huge country as big as the United Kingdom. And it is rich in resources. It has 6 different ethnicities: Indians, Africans, Chinese, Portuguese, a large population of what is called the mixed people, the Creolized people, who claim to be everything, of every ethnicity, and of course, they say when you're mixed forever. So when perhaps some of us will not be around, the mixed population will continue because they know how to assimilate and to live with each other. But it's amazing that in this land of 6 ethnicities, the British had encouraged conflicts between the major groupings of Indians and Africans. And we have found it very difficult over many years to prevent conflict, although sometimes we have cooperation. And part of the effort I have made over the years was to call for national unity. Because no country that is diverse as Guyana can survive if there is conflict. And you cannot win out against conflicts of any type. If you're 6 different types of people, you have 6 different types of conflicts. So I have decided, after 50 years, to leave an Indian-dominated party to form a coalition with 5 other parties in 2015. And we won the elections of 2015. And today we have a party of all the races, all the ethnicities in the government of Guyana. This is an achievement. Before that decision was made in 2015, I was very much influenced by what was taking place in Sri Lanka. We always have been looking at the situation in Sri Lanka. And I can say that the experience of Sri Lanka in January, I believe, of 2015 was the catalyst which led us to form what we call in Guyana the Rainbow Coalition in February on Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is a day for love and affection, and I hope that the 6-party coalition that forms the government of Guyana will continue in this sweetheart relationship for a long time to come. Because I do not believe that any ethnicity can triumph through conflict. Our way forward is to build relationship, is to build cohesion. The way forward is to promote partnership, to work with others who have similar objectives. The way forward is to be able to chart a new agenda where we are not caught up by issues that will fragment and divide us, such as casteism, racism, sexism. We cannot allow ourselves to fall victims to the diversion that keeps us fighting rather than building. And so I want to tell you that the example of Guyana is a good example. It is a good example because in Guyana, which forms part of the Caribbean, we know no practice of casteism. We have outlawed dowry as a compulsory aspect of marriages. Today, the women of our country, they occupy 1/3 of the seats of Parliament, and we are hoping by 2020 we should have 50% of the Parliament. The Cabinet has over 1/3 of its members as women. The Chancellor of the Judiciary, the Chief Justice, they're both women. The Director of Public Prosecution and the Chief Magistrate, they're also women. So that we have decided that the way forward in the partnership is to promote gender equality and to eliminate the gender imbalance that plagues so many of our countries. We believe that the liberation of women will point to the liberation of all of our societies. If women play the leading role, they have no time to talk about divisions and talk about separations, because women love more than we ascribe them to love their children and the future of their children and grandchildren. So it is out of this country in South America, which now stands on the very precipice of being an oil and gas country. We have found some of the richest deposits of oil and gas, and within a few months we will start production. There is a great possibility that we can cooperate with Tamils, and you have among the Tamils 80 million or so. The example of genius in the areas of technology and science and engineering, particularly petroleum engineering. Guyana requires cooperation with peoples of Tamil descent and also all Indians, because they have a role to play in a society that has half of its population coming from the continent of India. And so today I want to say that I hold out to you an invitation to visit our country, to help our country to build a unique economy and a society that is based on unity and social cohesion. We want to promote Guyana as an example of a green state because we have set an agenda by 2025, even though we may be producing oil. We are rich in hydro capacity, and we are rich also in other sunlight for almost 90% of the year, that we can become a green state and we can become 100% solar or other renewable energy driven. And so we want the cooperation from those who can give the technology to visit our country and to invest and to become, as I said, not relatives and families. We must become partners and partners for the future. I wish you well. I thank the organizers once again for bringing me here and to say that now you know that even though I have come from a very far land, that Tamils are not alone. And I want to end these few words. I've taken more time than I should have, with a quote from a great visionary and scientist and statesman, the late President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. He wrote, "Look at the star, at the sky. We are not alone. The whole universe is friendly to us and conspires only to give the best to those who dream and work," unquote. Thank you, Dr. Kalam, for reminding us that we all need to dream and we all need to move forward by hard work and conscientious effort. And may we all be constantly be guided by the richest and the noblest traditions of our culture, to be peaceful, to be friendly, and to be dedicated human beings who mean something to this world. Tamilians, I salute you. Thank you.